It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It's a long weekend, Valentine's Day weekend, President's Day weekend, and we are delighted that you're joining us. Mark and I are going to spend Valentine's Day together. Oh, no, we're not a couple. Remember someone once thought we were a couple? I do. It was fabulous a long time ago. Anyway, Mark is my work spouse. I have another spouse, and so does he. Battered spouse, because I was mean to him this morning. I wasn't mean to you. I was just frustrated because about something dumb. And I woke up too early. It's true. But that is because I am always compelled to read every single book of guests that I interview. And so I came in a mood where I said, I don't want to read any more of these books. And so I took it out on him because that's what you do. You take it out on your work spouse, as I should. Okay, we're broadcasting from the Capital One studios. Capital One, what's in your wallet? And this is the show that takes the mystery out of your financial life. But we can only do that if you send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That is the email address. If you're on the website, jillonmoney.com, we've got a contact button in the top right corner. Click on it and we will get it. We're starting the show with a caller. This is Andrew from Atlanta. Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Jill. Thanks. So I had some questions about whether it makes sense to invest emergency funds in a low-risk investment option like a bond index fund or something like that. Mm-hmm. And also, on top of that and related, is funds that are not necessarily emergency funds, but funds that might be for an mysterious anticipated purchase in the future, like a home improvement project or a car or something like that.
Yeah, almost like an intermediate term need. I don't need it this minute. I don't need it in a year, but I need it probably in the next few years. So some money there. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Sure.
I'm married, 41. My wife is 38. We have two boys, 8 and 3. I make about $300,000 a year. My wife is a teacher, but she's been staying home with the kids for the last several years. We can save right now about $6,000 to $6,500 a month in various instruments. Well, that's kind of a new development. We're playing catch up a little bit on our retirement funds. We finally kind of got to the point where we've paid off all our debt and we've, bought our house, and we're just kind of rolling in money now that we have some excess that we can spend elsewhere.
Excellent. That sounds great. What kind of retirement plan is offered to you through your work?
Yeah, so we offer a 401k, the traditional or Roth. The Roth was newly added last year, so I switched over to that.
Great.
And I maxed that out. So
great. Perfect.
That does not include, like when I say $6,500, that includes after I put money in the 401k.
Oh, great. That's awesome. Those two boys that are budding scholars that are heading to Georgia Tech and Emory, are we saving money for college for them?
Yeah. So basically what I do there is I essentially max out the tax benefit for Georgia. Mm-hmm. So it ends up being about $350 per month per child in a 503B.
Okay. Does that mean that they have to go to school in Georgia, right?
No.
Ah.
It's not like that.
So is that so you're talking about is this a 529 plan?
Oh, did I say? Yeah, I meant 529.
Okay, that's all right.
That's wrong. I got my things mixed up.
That's okay.
529.
Right. Okay, good. So that's the Georgia plan, and you're putting a bunch of money away in that. And that's, again, when you said $6,000 a month, was that was after you put money into retirement? Is it also after the 529 plan contribution?
Correct.
Okay. Wow, you are rolling in it, brother. Okay, so let's talk about your emergency reserve fund. What do you have right now in there?
Well, we have about $80,000 in just a savings account, but I would say of that, 50 is probably what I would consider the emergency fund.
Okay, so
and 30 is kind of that intermediate buffer.
Okay, fine. And then what about non-retirement investments? Do you have some money that's socked away already or not?
Yeah, we're starting that up. So my wife has some kind of, it's through her father's previous employer, but she's got like a mutual fund that's basically an index fund that she has some money in. There's about $30K there. We've got about 35 to 40 in a betterment account. That's just kind of what they recommend, a 90-10 split. So we have 65 that's in non-tax deferred kind of assets.
Okay. But that's really going to be the repository for the $6,000 a month because, obviously if you're maxing out retirement, there's only so much you can do. And you're putting money away for the kids, there's only so much you can do, right? So what I would say here is that, so when you think about your wife's mutual funds and the betterment account, let's just think of that as like sort of two umbrellas, but it's really the same thing, which is non-retirement savings. So your first question was, what do I think about you putting some of the emergency reserve fund to work in some way? I would say skip it. I mean, there's just not enough money and the risk is not worth it. I would prefer if you say to me like it's in a savings account and the rate is a stinker, then go open a new savings account. There's tons of online banks that are going to give you better interest than you would likely find if you were, in a brick and mortar environment like the traditional Chase Bank, Bank of America kind of thing. So you can go to depositaccounts.com and you'll find much higher earning money markets or high yielding savings accounts. That's good for the emergency reserves. Then I would take the surplus that you have, that extra 30. I'd add it to the betterment account, but I might label these two accounts differently. Instead of being, you can do one of two things. You can say, I'm going to have a 90-10 split with my most aggressive money. Or you might say, I'm just going to dial the risk back and say, I'm going to be 70-30 in this account because some of this money I might need to tap into in the next 3 to 5 years. Alternatively, if that feels like it's too hard, you can keep it separate. You can almost say, well, maybe my wife's mutual funds, they're more balanced in nature, and that's where we're going to keep the unexpected larger expense fund, and the betterment stays real risky. But I think that as you go forward, you have to do whatever feels right for you guys. If it feels better to, again, strip out your money in different ways, but it's just as reasonable to say, I just want one account. I'm just going to pull the risk back on this because I'm not a huge fan of 90-10, with all due respect to my friends at Betterment. I just think that that's more risk than anybody needs to take, and it's unnecessary. You're going to be a great saver. You are going to play some catch up. But you know what? If you're adding $70,000 a year into non-retirement investments and you're maxing out your retirement account, you're going to get there fast. And there's no reason that you need to take on 90% risk assets in that scenario. You're gonna make up for being a little bit behind as you perceive it, simply because you're saving so much money.
Okay.
Make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, and if necessary, once the kids get older, force your wife back into work, and you'll have that nice pension income. So that'll be good too.
Yeah, that's the plan. I don't know if she's on board with that plan.
I like that it's your plan though. That's good. Perfect. Okay, we are going to keep on rocking and rolling and answering your questions. So get ready, line up. I've got a lot of energy right now, ready to go. If you have a financial question, ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com, and maybe during the break, hop onto the website Jill on Money, and you can watch all the segments that I've done on CBS This Morning, including this past week's when I talked about tax season. So go check it out, JillOnMoney.com.
(401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to help you out of any financial jams or to celebrate your successes, either one. Just give us a shout. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Next up, we've got Linda from the Bay Area. Hi, Linda.
Yeah, so I am in my mid-30s. I'm a professional, and I live in the Bay Area. And it's just been incredibly expensive to live out here. I put myself through my undergrad and also a graduate school program. So as you can imagine, I have a lot of student loans. And, I would like to be financially secure and not have to worry about money in the future. And so, in my 30s now, I'm really just beginning to focus on getting to that point. But, there's a lot of things along the way. Like I have a massive student loan debt, and I also want to buy a house and start a family. And so I just don't really know, I guess, like in what order I should be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Should I put off my dream of owning my own house and starting that family for another 5 to 10 years? Will I ever be able to do it?
Dude, slow down. Calm down. I got to talk you off the ledge. Come on. First of all, you're not going to delay having children because of money. You're not going to do that because that's just a weird thing, and it won't work because that biological clock you can't wait 10 years. You mean your mid-40s. You got to have a kid. You're going to have a kid.
Yeah.
Let's go backwards for a second. First of all, how much money do you earn right now?
I make $98,000 a year.
Great. And you have a massive pile of debt from student loans. What is the total that is outstanding right now?
So in total, including what I've borrowed from family, which doesn't accrue interest.
No. Let's not do that family loan. Tell me what you're on the hook for.
I am on the hook for $104,000 roughly.
And then how much is family?
Family's small. It's only about $2,000 so far. I've been trying to pay that off because it's just a personal thing for me.
Okay.
To do that.
Okay. So let's just say $105,000. Making your regular payments right now and living on your $98,000 a year, are you doing okay otherwise? In other words, you're paying for your student loans. You're living in a high-priced area. Are you doing okay, or are you accumulating other debt? Are you accumulating credit card debt or anything nasty that's out there?
Thankfully, no. I'm pretty good with my money in the sense where, all my credit cards are paid off every month. I don't have a car loan. But so other than the student loan debt, that is really my biggest debt.
Okay. Okay. So let's go through. So now so that's your liability. Let's talk about assets. Do you have any money that's just safe money, emergency reserve money in the bank?
I am trying to build that. I currently have about $5,300. I should have about $14,000 by June.
Okay. Oh, great.
Yeah. The reason being is that I finally made the decision to bite the bullet and move back in with family. Mm-hmm. And I've been able to just basically shove everything that I'm not spending on expenses and other things like that into a savings account. Originally I wanted to save for a house, but I just don't know what to do with the money. So I've been doing a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm going to move the clock forward. So you'll have $14,000 by June. So that's good. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Do you have any old retirement accounts or some investment account? What do you got?
So in terms of retirement savings, I have in total about $127,000. I have about $119,000 in a Transamerica account. I have a separate Roth account for about $4,500, and then I have a very small investment account at $3,000 for a total of $127,000.
That investment account, what's in there? Stocks or mutual fund? What's in there?
It is heavily skewed towards stocks right now because that's the way I set the allocation, because I figure it's a long-term account.
Why is that a long-term account if it's an investment account? In other words, it's a taxable account. It's not a retirement account, right?
No, it is not. It is a taxable account, but I just thought, I will kind of put that in my retirement savings since all the money in there is going to be for retirement someday.
So first things first is you're not investing right now. That is not what you're doing. We are not in the business for you in your situation that you should be investing outside of retirement. What you should be doing is take that $3,000 and now you will pop that right down on your highest interest school loan debt. What are the interest rates associated with that debt right now?
Right now they range from 3 to 6.9, so 3 to 7%.
3 to 7. So pop that $3,000 down on the 7% debt. Just plop it down there. Every dollar that you have available beyond retirement money. So what are you putting into retirement right now?
I'm putting about 10%.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Put the 10% in there. Keep doing that. Do not put any more money into any other investments. every dollar that you have freed up after, and you said you're putting money in your emergency reserve. Let's say, I'm just going to, like, for argument's sake, if you have $100 available in a given month, half of that is going to go towards building your emergency reserve, and the other half is going to go towards paying down the most expensive student loan debt that you have. I don't think you're in a position to buy a house for a lot of reasons. One is that the loan is manageable right now, but the loan would not be manageable if you also had to then juggle a mortgage. And right now, what you're doing is the absolute smartest thing, which is you're shacking up with some family. You're accelerating the pay down of the debt. I'm not saying that if you have, say, $50,000 in student loan debt that you can't go out and buy a house. But I think you need to have a lot of things settled by then. So I think that if you are thinking about starting a family, do you have a spouse that would help you with this? Do you have somebody who's, might be in the picture for a family? Or you can do this on your own?
Yeah, I have someone in the picture. We've been dating steadily. We just don't know when that hammer is going to be.
Okay, wait. Does he or she have a ton of money that's going to help you with buying a home? That's my question.
No. So we're kind of both in the same boat here. The one thing is, the only reason I was even entertaining potentially getting a house is because my family has stepped up and said that we will give you some money for the down payment.
Better they should give you money to pay off your student loan debts.
Yeah, I know.
That's really would be better. And in fact, if they want to do something nice, tell them to start by forgiving the family loan, the $2,000. You are not buying a house right now. I'll tell you why. It is too. It will feel like you are drowning. Like, it's just, to me, too risky for you to take on this thing called a mortgage. Because, as you know, if you and your honey are making $200,000 a year and living in the Bay Area and you want to have kids, you cannot get into a house for like a reasonable amount of money. And you don't have the money to put that down right now. So tell me that you said, well, you know what we're going to do? We're both really awesome. We have great degrees and we're going to move to Dallas and we can buy a house for $400,000 in Dallas. Yeah. Then you can do it. But you're staring down the barrel of like an $800,000 house and you got to commute an hour and a half. That doesn't make sense to me. Take yourself off the hook. You know what? You're not throwing money out the window. You're buying flexibility. You're buying opportunity. That's how you have to think about it. And I swear I'd be happy to talk to your parents about this. I get that people really want their kids to have a house because they find that to be the ultimate, like, oh, I know that you'll just be okay. But you're not okay if you're living in a house with a $400,000 mortgage and you have $100,000 in student loan debt. I just don't, I just don't see how that serves you right now. So do what you're doing. Take money out of the investment account. Pay off that 7% student loan debt. Keep whittling it down. I hope that you call me next in a year and you say, okay, all the debt above 4% is now paid off. That's what you're hoping for. You want this to get, and when you get to that place, then we're talking about, okay, now maybe we can buy a house. Okay. When we return, we're going to get back to more of your questions. During the break, I encouraged you last time to go watch what I put out on TV last week. How about checking out our resource section? It's so good. And if you stumble across any great financial resources, send them to us and we'll add it to the resource section. Okay, we'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. I love when you guys follow up with more questions. So you recidivist questioners, we love it. We love it. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. And this is from Stephen, who said, I was kind enough to answer a previous question about an annuity. So here's a more complicated question. My wife and I are making the transition to retirement. We've got no free cash. We have near-term financial needs of about $100,000. That's never good, Mark. No cash and near-term needs. Wife is working. He's been retired for 5 years. He's 69. She's 59. They own a condo and a duplex that they live in half of. Properties all have 4.25% mortgages on them with 20 plus years left, producing $15,000 of annual income. She has $300,000 single life annuity that will start paying out money at her age 59 and a half. He's got a defined benefit pension. He's got $480,000 in an IRA, mostly in cash. She's got $125,000 in an IRA, 60 cash, 40 in stock funds. He'll start Social Security. Let's see. We're in good health. In retirement, all sources of income will produce around $100,000 pre-tax. And in 3 years, she gets her 20 grand of Social Security. I'm trying to convince my wife we should sell the condo. All right, here we go. Here's his logic. 1, selling the condo will allow them to cover their short-term cash needs. That sounds great. And it will allow them to lock in the recent gains they've seen in the real estate market. She likes the condo. She wants to keep it and move in. I think we need the cash, and I'm reluctant to pay the $600 monthly up maintenance cost to the condo. After paying all the costs and covering the $100,000 in financial obligations, we'd still have about $150,000 cash. I think the cash covers us for a few years at the front end of retirement if the economy tanks and assets go on sale. We'll have some cash to take advantage of that. Our retirement plans are to travel quite a bit, but who knows? We live in Washington State, no state income tax. That's kind of great. Reality check. Have I overthought this? Am I lost in the weeds? I'm reluctant to engage a fiduciary retirement planner. I guess the thing is I don't like that there are fees. Okay, that's fine. All right, here's a deal, Stephen. You ready for this? I love the idea of selling this condo, and I'm going to piss off your wife, and I'm sorry for that. Not so much from the asset has appreciated, because, that's a little bit of market timing. But let's be clear. When you have $100,000 of near-term needs, I don't understand what her alternative is. You should not take the money out of the retirement account. So you don't have a lot of things to tap, assets to tap. You mostly have retirement assets. And I just don't think this makes a lot of sense. I think selling the condo works for me. I'm not a big on holding on to things. I'm big into financial security. And you've got to give me an alternative. Tell me what your wife wants to do instead of that. I think that's what I would do. Okay? I don't know what to say to people. You. Sometimes it's I guess what I don't understand is why you want to put yourself at risk. For what? There's a way out. Mike says one of his goals for this year, 2020, is to find and meet with a certified financial planner in my area. I have some fear around doing this, but it'll be better for me in the long run. All right. He says it's certainly better to face the fear and go into retirement planning with my eyes open rather than sticking my head in the sand for another 10 to 20 years. How much should I expect to pay for a fee-only advisor meeting? $300 an hour, a visit, a plan? I have no idea. I don't want to get ripped off or feel like I overpaid. Mike, it's totally different. Everyone has a sort of a sliding scale. Couple of things to consider. Number one is you can pay by the hour, and it could be $200 an hour, $300 an hour. Sometimes you can pay by the month. There's this organization called Facet Wealth. They charge, as little as $40 a month. Sometimes it's more like $100 or $150. It kind of depends on the complexity. So what I would do is I would start with whether it is an individual or using a place like Facet Wealth that'll match you with an individual, that you really just understand how complicated is your life. And, if you're going to be working with someone on an hourly basis, sometimes a plan for someone who has a lot of money can be $10,000. It is often based not so much on your asset level, but on that complexity of your life. That's what we need to know. So if you're confused, just do me a favor. All you have to do is just give us a shout. Go meet with some people. Go to our website, jillonmoney.com. Click on resources. Top thing that we have there is the questions you should ask before you hire a financial advisor or planner. Okay? So that's what I would do. And finally, this is from Randy, who's 50 years old, and he wants to work into his early 70s. Should he convert a 401k into a Roth 401k? Well, you can't convert it unless you got the money to spend on the conversion. If you're asking whether you should use a Roth 401k, we need to know about your tax bracket and what's going on in the rest of your life. I love the idea of prepaying your taxes so that you know what your tax liability is going into retirement. I just think that's incredibly helpful. Okay? I'm really blowing through these, Mark. I got to breathe a little bit there. Trudy's 80 years old. Pension, Social Security, and annuity. Amounts to some money, long-term health. Wants to know if she needs a trust. No, you don't need a trust. As long as you've got a will, a durable power of attorney, and a healthcare proxy, you're not going to need a trust. You should be fine. Don't do it. It's okay. Okay. It's Jill on Money. If you have a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Go to the website, jillonmoney.com. All sorts of fun things there. Check it out. My book is available in paperback now. So check the website, jillonmoney.com. Lots of links there for you. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, I'd love to hear from you. Come on, send me a note. I'm so lonely. I'm not really, but send us a note anyway. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's what Lori did. Lori writes she just turned 59 and obviously very soon she can take money from her 401k without penalty. She writes, I was kind of blindsided by a divorce. I got stuck with a lot of debt, but I also helped my kids out. I've been working 2 jobs for a long time and I want to enjoy my life. I quit my part-time job and I want to quit my part-time job by age 60. I've close to $200,000 in my 401k. My house will be paid off in roughly 4 years. If I draw about $10,000 and put it down on my credit card debt, I'll be able to work full-time, 1 job. I'm a nurse. Both jobs are stressed and busy. What are your thoughts, Lori? Lori, here's the deal. Stop. What's with a mortgage pay down? Calm down about paying down that mortgage. You don't need to do that. If you're asking me, should you pay down credit card debt? Sure, you can do that. But don't forget, you are going to have to pay tax on that money. I'm okay with that, because the amount is not that big, but I really want to encourage you to conserve the money that's in that account so that you can make sure that you've got enough money for retirement. So unless I'm missing something, yeah, you can do it, but I don't want you to get in the habit of doing it, okay? How's that? I think that makes sense. Okay, this is from Linda, who lives in Virginia. And she reads my column, and she said, I kept the one about life insurance isn't sexy. It sure isn't, but man, it's important. Okay. Linda says, we had a policy on my husband, but he passed away almost 15 years ago. I find myself having to pay a grace period about 3 times a year that is over $1,000. My premium on a $25,000 policy, it's only $118 a year. I do understand the way my policy is written, but does this seem like a bit high? I want to keep the policy for my children. Really? Why? I'm not sure you need it. Can you explain the Gerber grow-up plans that a lot of us took out when our grandchildren were born? Are they worth it? No, they're not worth it. Definitely do not buy any life insurance on your kids. I'm not convinced that you need life insurance on yourself for your children. I would need to know more about you, but As kids get older and your needs change, I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan on people keeping insurance if they don't need insurance. Okay? Paul writes, I purchased my mother's house for $1 several years ago. The original purchase price was, this is going to get nasty, $80,000. It's now worth $250,000. When I sell the house, is it correct that I would pay capital gains on the $170,000 increase in value? Yes, it is. It's one of the reasons I hate when people buy these homes. And in fact, I would say this. I'm not even sure. You might even have a bigger tax liability. Because how did you record when you paid that dollar for the house? How exactly did you record that? Because that is substantially below fair market value at the time. I could almost make a argument that you have $250,000 in capital gains. Now, I don't know if you should probably talk to an accountant. Capital gains is slightly different than the way that regular income taxes work, but capital gains are taxed at 0, 15, 20, and 23.8%. But if I were you, Paul, I'd be going to an accountant to get this, at least understand what the tax liability is, because you may not have as much wiggle room as you think. All right? And that's really important. Just want to know what the number is. Okay. Question from, let's see, Jeff. Is there any value to investing nickel and dimes into an Acorn account? Your thoughts, fees, level of risk? Acorns is fine, but it really, should you be investing that way? It may be better that you do other things. So I like the idea that, Acorns makes you focus on this, but the reality is there are probably other parts of your financial life that could use a little love. Okay? Last here is from Julie. Can you tell me the average amount for any U.S. citizen that has a 401k and investment portfolio that's in the age group of 60 to 65? Different stats, extremely low numbers. What's happened to this age group if the stats are correct? How can these folks ever retire? I love your show. I enjoyed listening to you on Saturday and mornings on WCCO radio. Hey, stay tuned. I might be coming out to Minnesota, by the way. The numbers are all over the place because if you have a 401k account, if you look at some of the Fidelity numbers, the average is a couple 100,000 when you're in your 60s. But there's a whole bunch of people that don't have any retirement plan assets, and they bring average, even medians down. So what happened to a lot of these people is they got completely shellacked by the financial crisis, or they worked at places that didn't offer retirement plans. And I think that's actually one of the biggest issues, that if you don't have a retirement plan available to you, then many times you find that those people are really left in the dust. Okay, it's Jill on Money. When we return, we're going to answer more of your questions. It's Jill on Money. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That is our email address. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address, it's askjill at jillonmoney.com. And you can always go to the website, jillonmoney.com. There you'll find all sorts of fun things. You can read, you can listen, you can watch. We got some resources. You can sign up for the free weekly newsletter. It's all there. Just do it. We are broadcasting live from the Capital One studios. Capital One, what's in your wallet? We're going to find out right now from Betty, who's got a couple questions about Social Security. What do I need to apply for spousal Social Security benefits? This is an easy one. You need a spouse, and you need to go to ssa.gov. ssa.gov. You might need to actually go through the process of registering at the Social Security website, okay? Question, are spousal Social Security benefits entitled to delayed retirement credits? Yeah, but it's based on whoever is claiming is entitled to the credits, not the spouse who's claiming on the record. In other words, if Mark and I are married and he is the one whose record is going to be used because he makes more than I do, then if he waits and waits and waits, then he will get credits. And then when I apply, my half will just be more. Okay, now she writes, I read it doesn't, but when I checked my Social Security account, the benefit amount for the full retirement age is different from the amount I would get if I began withdrawing at age 70. Well, because you probably have two different records. So there may be that. I think that's the case. But I would start at Social Security. That's where everything is. And we once had a Social Security expert on who said, you should call. We always laughed about that. All right. That's fine. Okay, here's a question. Okay. My father recently died. He left behind a home equity loan that I am now paying off. Should I try to use what's in my retirement account to settle that? No. Do not. No. Don't do that. And maybe you should sell the house. Let's think about that. Okay. It's Jill on Money. We've got a whole nother hour. If you'd like to get in touch with us, just send an email. AskJill@JillOnMoney.com. All right. Stay tuned. We've got a whole nother hour. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You are back. It is hour number 2. It's the Jill on Money Show. Thank you for joining us. We're broadcasting from the Policy Genius Studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com. Do it. So this is what happened for me. Last weekend, I thought to myself, I always do my taxes, prepare my taxes for my CPA during the Academy Awards. It's sort of my red carpet ritual. And then I realized, wait a minute. The Academy Awards were a month earlier than they used to be. And I didn't have some of my documents. How about that? I'm missing 2 1099s from brokerage accounts. That was rather annoying to find that out. Anyway, you're probably getting ready to do your taxes. So grab last year's return and get ready to organize those documents, those W-2s, those 1099s, your bank, investment, mutual fund, mortgage company documents. Just do that. And there's not that much that's different. We did see some changes to tax brackets and standard and itemized deduction limits, but those are just inflation adjustments. The 3 big changes include that there's no longer a penalty if you didn't carry health insurance last year, that individual mandate, done. There is sort of good news, bad news on alimony. If you were separated or divorced after 2018, alimony payments are no longer deductible for the payer, but they are not treated as taxable income to the recipient. Of course, if you were divorced prior, the old rules apply. And those out-of-pocket medical expenses, remember that you have to be someone who itemizes deductions, and those expenses, in order to deduct them, have to be more than 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. Also, a gentle reminder, ladies and gentlemen, as much as you like to go out and hire people for help, any taxpayer earning $69,000 or less, that's about 100 million filers, you can be part of the IRS Free File Program. That's an amazing program. So I would be remiss if I didn't underscore that, because A lot of people are paying for tax help they don't need. Two other resources, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, or VITA, and tax counseling for the elderly. All right, now we're switching gears. We're going to college, and we've got an expert to talk you through why it is so hard to pay for college. Here is author and academic Caitlin Zaloom. Her book is called Indebted. So in this book, one of the sort of the main thesis is that there is an inherent conflict that is really being embodied and acted out in almost all middle-class families. So can you describe that conflict for the listeners?
Yes. So on the one hand, families are being told from very early on in their children's lives, basically from the time any child is born, that they should be doing everything that they can to save for college, that the only responsible thing to do as both parents and as kind of citizens of our economy is to start putting away money for college. At the same time, parents are being told that, in fact, they have to spend. They have to spend in order to get their kids into a good school district. So they have to pay as much rent as they can. They have to buy as much house as they can in the best school district as they can.
And all the activities that are going to make you into a well-rounded, resume-built student who's going to apply to the best school you can get into. All of that, those things are expensive.
Absolutely, they're expensive. And even that, what you're mentioning, has a dual character to it. So on the one hand, it is for resume building. On the other hand, it's because parents actually want their kid to be well-rounded people, to participate in the full range of possibilities of their lives, including things like sports and arts.
I don't feel like in my time, as a late 80s graduate of college, that this conflict was being, I don't know, I mean, it was probably always there, but it feels like it's just gotten worse and worse. And in the book, you say that it's the early 80s where this idea of like, you shouldn't rely on anyone else and that this is going to be important. That pre-80s, it was like the government's going to help you out. And then post-1980, we're talking about you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that shift is somewhat political, but it has now turned into families. Where do you see the escalation of that conflict really beginning, and when does it get a little bit, maybe does it seem to get away from us a bit?
I think you're right that it starts kind of in the 1980s and then really, really ramps up in the 1990s. So it's not only that it starts under the Reagan administration, but it also continues through the Clintons and until today. So it's a bit of a bipartisan consensus, I suppose. The issue is really that in the 1980s and 1990s, there was a real shift in the way that politicians, policy experts, and others began to think about what college meant. So in that time period, there was a very strong movement to reframe college as an asset, a private good that students would benefit from in terms of their income. And because college meant elevated income later on, those policy experts and politicians began to think of paying for college also as a private matter, something that should be borne by the students and their families privately. And this is when the expansion of the loan system really began.
This paragraph really resonated with me. You said that there are tensions between the sacred responsibilities that parents feel towards their children and the cultural expectations of fiscal prudence that financial advisors, lenders, and policy makers prescribe. And I felt a little bit as I was reading this book. So I'm a former investment advisor, certified financial planner. And it's not that I used to say, oh, you should save money for college at any cost, because I always felt like parents should come first. But I always struggled because parents would actually not feel comfortable with the advice that I was offering. And that's really what my takeaway was, being in the business of giving advice, is that when you say, Kate, you know what? I get that you want to save for college. You can't. And that they're walking out of that office and they're like, I have to. What is that have to? Why do they feel like they have to?
So parents feel like they have to save for college because it is going to be so expensive, and they also don't even know how expensive it is going to be. And this is one of the very strange things about the system that we have set up right now. So we have colleges and universities that will cost them at minimum, on average, $25,000. That would be an average cost of attendance for a public university per year.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that it's important when we throw out that number also to remind ourselves that the median income in this country is like $63,000 a year.
We'll get back to our interview with Caitlin Zaloom in just a minute. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. Hey, you know what's out? The paperback edition of my book. Yeah, I haven't been trying to sell this at all. Just kidding. Of course I am. If you would like a copy of my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs, you can go to your favorite bookseller, but you can also go to my website, or I should say our website, because really Mark runs the website. JillOnMoney.com. That is the address of the website. And there you can just click on this wonderful little tab that says the book. And you can check it out. It's like basically the stuff we talk about all the time here. So I encourage you to check out the book. A big section of my book is concentrated on the idea of paying for college and the choices that people make around college. Now, since the book has come out, I've been diving deeper into the topic, and our guest, Caitlin Zaloom, the author of Indebted, really did start to shift some of my perceptions around college funding and the choices that families make. So I find that that although I stick to my advice in the book, which is, put yourself first and it's a family decision, there is certainly a little bit more room to understand why we make the decisions we make, especially if you make too much to qualify for aid and not enough to pay for it out of cash flow. So here's more of our interview with Caitlin Zaloom. The middle class, as you define it, is not, the Pew Research quintile thing. You're basically saying if you make more than $50,000, you don't qualify for a lot of the grants that are out there, right?
That's right, yeah.
I was wondering what you think is the upper end of that band, because I think that people are often surprised when they are going through the college experience and they'll say, I live in New York, or I live in a burb, and I live in California, or I live in Ohio, and I make good money. I make $200,000 a year. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of money, maybe more in Ohio than on the coast, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But if you make $200,000 a year as a married couple, can you explain what kind of aid, financial aid, you might be able to get as that family? A family of four, let's make it up. What does that look like for most people?
So there is that possibility for a high-earning family to get aid, but we might want to ask what that aid does within any college or university's ability to support students who might really need it. I guess I would also point out that if you're making $200,000, you might actually just be able to pay cash. You might have started a 529 because you had somewhat more than you needed in a day-to-day way, and that's not necessarily the condition of most people. But of course, yes, $200,000 in New York, in San Francisco, and other high rent and just high-cost places. Certainly does not go as far as it would in the suburbs of Detroit, which is where you'd likely be if you were sending your kid to Western Michigan. One thing that I think is really interesting is the question of where people get that money to pay in the first place. So even families that don't make $200,000 have to face some cost that they have to bear. And then they kind of shift into gear trying to make that work, trying to pay that cost more or less no matter what.
And yet you also point out that, and I guess this is back to your anthropological background, that parents feel this need to create independent kids.
Yes.
And the process itself is making them dependent.
Right.
So that's so wacky.
Right. Yes, that's incredibly strange because college is supposed to do exactly that. It is supposed to give young adults the ability to go off into the world and to make the most of their talents and to live their own lives separate from what their parents have given them up to the point where they leave home.
What also really did resonate with me, because I feel like I want to confess to you that I was one of those people. I am one of those people who really does try to say to people, not so much save for college, but like, please take care of yourself. And I think that until I read your book, that I would kind of walk away from having a call with a listener and say, they're not going to be able to do it. And like almost judge it. This is because I have 4-legged children, not 2-legged children, I suppose. But the conversations that are happening are far more thoughtful, I think, than most people give the masses credit for. And so when you hear the debates about, okay, we're going to wipe out student loan debt, and then, you hear someone go in a box on cable TV say like, why should I have paid back my debt? These people are deadbeats. They never should take out the debt for. That's not what's happening. And you interviewed how many people for this?
80 parents, 80 students.
Most people? What was the experience?
I mean, most people are incredibly thoughtful about sending their kid to college, and families know very well what the toll is going to be on their household finances. I mean, parents know that the money that they're going to spend on their kid is money that they won't have later to secure their retirement. I do feel like there is a tendency to kind of lecture people about that, but they understand it. And so it's a decision to make that they choose to support their kids before they make sure that their retirements are in place.
One time a flight attendant told me, I always use the analogy of the flight attendant, put the mask on yourself before you put it on your kid. She goes, guess what? The plane's going down, they're putting on the kid first.
Exactly. I don't know why we're so surprised about this. Also, if parents actually chose to put their mask on first, we wouldn't need to tell them this over and over and over again.
I know.
It would just be common sense, but it's not. So I think that from my perspective, what we need to be focusing on is the conflict that most people live in, which is that they really feel an obligation to save and to be good, kind of financially responsible people. They understand that, but they're in situations where their incomes don't live up to the commitments that they have to their kids.
How can we help families who are in this conflict right now?
The cost of college has to come down, and it has to come down for a number of reasons. First, because actually, having a lower cost of attendance would just put less pressure on people's finances. Then they could focus on the things that they're good at, like recognizing what their kids' talents are, what their kids' needs are, and launching that person out into the world. That's what families are good at. And so I think the most important thing is that we need to recognize and support that very basic commitment that families have.
Okay, but are we building essentially what will become a two-tiered system where you have, really rich people will continue to send their kids to expensive schools, and everyone else will get what, in your hope?
Well, I think one thing that we need to remember is that in this country, we have had some of the best public colleges and universities in the world. I'm a graduate of UC Berkeley. That's where I got my PhD. And so I've seen up close the incredible power of public universities in this country. There is no engine, and okay, maybe I'm a little biased, but there is really no engine better than the UC system for creating a middle class for the state. And we certainly had that in New York with CUNY, and CUNY still is doing amazing work. The public university systems are incredibly important, but they have been the target for cuts.
Yeah, they've been bled dry.
They've been bled dry. They've been bled and bled and bled, so that even schools like UC Berkeley rely on high-paying, out-of-state students to fund the very California students that they're tasked with educating. And that also goes for out-of-country students as well.
Okay, we'll get back to our interview with Caitlin Zaloom in just a second. During the break, maybe what you want to do is head on over to savingforcollege.com and check out some of the best 529 plans. Here we are talking so much about college. So that's a place to find out more about your 529 plan of your state. Okay, we will be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And we are talking about college with a guest, Caitlin Zaloom. She's an academic. She's a professor at NYU. She's also written a book called Indebted. It got a ton of press. It's really interesting because it starts to shift the conversation around instead of thinking, oh, you're an irresponsible donkey for choosing to get your kids saddled with debt or saddling yourself with debt. It really dives into the conflict that parents are facing as they are trying to prepare young adults for a workforce to make them better human beings. But hearing the stories that she encountered and reading the book made me a bit more, well, let's say less severe in the way I looked at it. So I really do appreciate that that Caitlin was able to convince me, and everyone can be convinced. So here's the rest of our interview with Caitlin Zaloom. So when the parents who are listening to this, they're like, I hear this and I feel this conflict. What's some advice that you can offer after talking to these 80 parents and 80 students?
Yeah, I think that it is a really hard bind to be in. So historically, higher education has been a real bipartisan commitment. We all need to send our kids to college if they can get there, and so I think that we kind of need to get back to that. On the personal front, there are a couple of ways of approaching this high cost that I think are important. One is about getting merit aid if your student qualifies. So that means making sure as students are approaching applying to college that their grades are really good.
Yeah, well, if you have like an average student. I got the all-American kid, and he or she, good kid, not lighting the world on fire, but I really would like that kid to be educated. Do you find that did you find some families who could say, this is all we have?
So first of all, I think that the advice about shooting for merit aid, I mean, it of course only increases the pressure on students who are already feeling an enormous amount of pressure. So, I say that with a certain degree of hesitation. I think that the other aspect is to really think very broadly about what kind of schools can be good for your kid.
Right. And stop with the judgments. I actually had an NYU professor who said to me, well, if you can get into the top school, great, but otherwise do not go to a private school. Like, you're insane. You're throwing your money out the window. But again, I think that brings up that conflict. I want to give my kids what I think is the best match, the best school. But why? But again, that's a hard conversation, right?
It's a hard conversation. And I also think that we need to be thinking about the kind of decision ecology in which families exist. Okay, so it's like a landscape of private schools and public schools. Sometimes the differences in payment between these things is exaggerated. So public schools can actually be very expensive. I mean, especially because the kind of room and board component of public school is actually much greater than in proportion than it is at private schools, and it's more or less fixed. The deals that students can get at public and private, not necessarily that different. So that's an important part of this kind of ecology that people live in. Also, we have been taught that things that cost more are better.
Yeah.
And so I think that we really need to live up to understanding that that's a message, that the sticker price of private colleges is a message that we're sending to people. The education that students will get there is better. And we also, I mean, since the 1980s, have been saying that, in fact, the private sector gives things that are better than the public one anyway. So all of that is part of the kind of ecology that parents have to make decisions within.
It's interesting. I'm listening to you, and I'm wondering also how a family navigates this without kind of losing your mind. It seems like this becomes like the hyper focal point of the family, and that spending all this time talking about this, I just can't imagine what it must feel like for everybody involved. Is the solution, tuition comes down, or online education becomes more prevalent, that we get more money flowing to these universities, that this is some tipping point that we're entering? You said you're more optimistic, and you have a very glowy smile, and maybe it's because you're too familiar with this, because reading it was a little scary. Because I felt first of all, I felt like you opened my eyes to the conflict that I think I knew on subconscious level, but not really in the front of mind. I did not know that. So thank you for that. I guess that I'm wondering, what's the optimism here?
Yeah. I think that the optimism comes from the time that I spent with all of these families and the many conversations that I had with them. Parents and students are so committed to each other and so devoted to making things work for young adults. And that commitment just comes through so strongly. These are, for the most part, really lovely, responsible people who gave me hope that if we could support them in doing what they do well and what they are totally devoted to doing, that we can do this. Like, this will turn out much better than the situation we currently have.
What is the best lending situation, or what is the best structure that you could imagine if we started fresh?
College might be $50,000 for you, and it might be $20,000 for you, and you don't know. And imagine walking into a car dealership where they were like, this Ford might be $50,000 or $20,000.
Good luck.
Knows? Good luck. Yeah. I mean, that just makes no sense to begin with. So that's kind of the baseline strangeness of it all, as far as I'm concerned. I think that the student lending system has to be, it needs to be centralized. It needs to be functioning essentially in the same way that we have a payroll tax.
Thanks so much to Caitlin Zaloom. The book is called Indebted. Very interesting. Hey, if you've got more questions about how to bring up the subject of higher ed with your kids, why don't you check out friend of the show's website, BethKobliner.com. Beth Kobliner with a K, BethKobliner.com. The part of her website that's great is called We Need to Talk College. So check it out. And when we return, we're going to answer more of your questions. So stay tuned. We still got more to go.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, Valentine's Day weekend. Or if you know anyone in the industry of the restaurant or hospitality world, you will know that that essentially means that it's amateur hour, because this is when people pay up to get a really expensive meal and for nothing, practically. All right. We got so many emails about the changes in the rules that surround retirement. And specifically, I wrote about this Secure Act. And, you know, the Secure Act, lots of different parts of it, a lot of different moving pieces. That said, I know you're going to have questions. So I'm going to answer some questions. We're going to have a guest on, the IRA expert, Ed Slott. He's going to be on to help demystify the Secure Act to you. But by and large, just so you know, of course, I have this on the website. So go check out the website, jillonmoney.com. jillonmoney.com. And we got a lot of stuff up there. Okay, Frank wrote that he had questions after my article appeared in the Chicago Tribune. So he says he doesn't understand this, especially about the taxes that are due at your income tax bracket at the time. So here's his situation. He says, suppose my 68-year-old wife dies in 2020 and she leaves an IRA account with $100,000 in it to her 40-year-old son from a previous marriage. How would the money be distributed and, more importantly, be taxed? And he adds, the 40-year-old son would need to know what tax bracket his mother was in at her death, right? Doesn't sound right. Okay, here's the rule. You know, it doesn't matter what tax bracket mom is in. When you inherit the IRA, essentially what is happening is that it's as if it were your money that was sitting in a retirement account. And the way it is taxed is at your tax bracket. So let's say that 40-year-old son is a single guy, and let's say that he's in, I don't know, let's put him in the 24% tax bracket, which means he makes 100 and anywhere between 85 and 160 grand a year or so. Okay. So he inherits the IRA. He's got $100,000 that has to come out over the course of 10 years. He could take $10,000 a year out for 10 years, get all the money out, and that $10,000 would be taxed at his income tax bracket that year. So again, if you wanted to take it all out at once, and he said, hey, I make 150 grand, I'm going to take $100,000 out all at once, it's as if he got another $100,000 added to his taxable income, and he would then be subject to the highest rate of 35%, because that would pop him up into a couple brackets. Essentially, just think of it as the only thing that happens is you will actually be taxed on whoever the beneficiary is. You're going to be taxed on the money that comes out as if you had earned that income. It's just more income. Okay. I hope that helps clarify, Frank. I know that it is confusing, but I wouldn't go nutty. It's okay. You're going to get there. All right. Here's a question that comes from Jean, who says, my local bank took what they called my required minimum distribution out of my IRA CD without my permission or authorization. Ooh, I was not notified of the withdrawal, and I found out about it when I decided to check my accounts with them online. I take my entire required minimum distribution from investments, not CDs. Was the withdrawal legal? Wow, that's not cool. It's surprising. I wonder if perhaps did they send you something that you signed that you didn't realize? It's odd that they took that out automatically. So I don't think it's illegal, but if you didn't want it, you may have to recharacterize that and get help from the bank. Again, I don't want to like accuse them of something, but it doesn't sound like it's right. Well, she's saying, Mark's asking, well, what if she's at the age and it has to come out? The thing is, though, what she's saying is she's taking her required minimum distribution from her investments to cover all of her IRA accounts. That's what she's saying. So if she has another IRA, is what I'm hearing, is that she has another IRA that she's using to take the distribution for all of her IRAs, which you're allowed to do. So I don't know, that's really interesting. I guess we need a little bit more information. If we got any of the facts wrong about that, let us know, okay? Because that to me is something that you want to keep a tight rein on. And if there was a mistake, there was a mistake. I mean, the IRS knows that mistakes are made by institutions. God knows, please, there's plenty of them. All right. This is your opportunity as we go into the break for you to go check out some of our great content. We don't just do audio. We write stuff. You can check out old shows. You could even watch some of my TV segments. Also, Mark has updated all the resources for you. Check it out. Just go to JillOnMoney.com. And while you're there, why not subscribe to our podcast? It's called Jill on Money, just like the radio show, but it's a little different. But check it out. Jill on Money. It's a separate broadcast. The podcast, Jill on Money. Go to our website and we'll be happy to sign you up right away in a jiff. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, where we are broadcasting live from the Policy Genius studios. Policy Genius is the easy way to compare and buy insurance. Just go to policygenius.com to check it out. All right, before we finish up the program, let's do an email. This is an interesting one because we've been talking a lot about mortgage rates falling. And so there has been a lot of talk about people who are refinancing, which is fantastic. But this got Deanna wondering, and here's the email from her. I was wondering what your thoughts are on reverse mortgages. I would be interested in the pros and the cons and the process involved in applying for a reverse mortgage. My husband and I are senior citizens. We live on Social Security and some savings. We're very comfortable in our one-story bungalow. We have a small mortgage. I'm just thinking of future options as we continue to age. These could be downsizing to a small apartment or a condo, going to a senior retirement complex, or staying in our home. Okay, so listen, Deanna, this is an important part of your financial planning process. So let me begin by saying reverse mortgages are a complicated product. That means you probably need another set of eyes on that product itself, because it may be that in your case, even though you've got a pile of equity in your small bungalow, it could be that maybe you're better off renting. The reverse mortgage is available to people who are over 62. They tend to work better when you have a shorter period of time, meaning when you're older, and they tend to work a little bit better when interest rates are higher. So I guess that I would just say, have someone else look at it, get a second opinion. It's worth considering and putting it in the mix, but I wouldn't be so quick to jump on the reverse mortgage bandwagon. I actually have an entire chapter of my book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money. And it's actually a subsection of a chapter about reverse mortgages. So you may want to check that out, but see a financial planner about that. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's the show. And we are always excited to hear from you. So if you have a question throughout the week, all you have to do is just send us a note. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Have a great week, and we will catch up with you in just a short week further. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.